How are you doing, Maribel? Okay,
I think we're live and we started recording, so we're good to go.
Okay, letting attendees in now.
All right, maybe another 30 seconds, Maribel, and then we'll let Amber start us off.
Yes.
Hili, Hoyo Wishnam, Amber. Hello, everyone. My name is Amber Esquivel. I come from the Picayune Rancheria Chickasaw Indians, and I'm also the outreach counselor for the Native American Initiative at Fresno State under the Department of Outreach and Special Programs. And I've been invited to share a land acknowledgement, which reads, the Fresno State campus sits in the midst of the San Joaquin Valley, a valley rich in the traditions and representation of Native American peoples and cultures. We are grateful to be in the traditional homelands of the Yokuts and Mono peoples, whose diverse tribal communities share stewardship over this land. And our land acknowledgement was created by our Director of American Indian Studies, Dr. Leslie Oliver. And at this time, I would like to invite all of you listening today with us to visit on Zoom to use the chat box and acknowledge the Native people whose land you're currently occupying. And while you're doing that, if you would like to learn more about land acknowledgements, what they are, why do we use them, or how to create your own, you can visit the link that's going to be provided to you and download their resources. They also have beautiful Zoom backgrounds, just like what I'm using today. There's a video as well that you can watch and learn more about land acknowledgements. And I also wanted to dive deeper today in our land acknowledgement, specifically on the terms Yokuts and Mono. So on the slide, you can see we have a picture of California of our native land pre-contact to the right. And on the left-hand side, there's just a glimpse, zoomed in picture of our Central Valley, pointing out some of California's federally recognized tribes. And notice that I say federally recognized because we still have unfederally recognized tribes. And in the Central Valley, we have the Choinumni, Wuchumni, Dumna, Dunlap Band of Mono Indians, Chowchilla Tribe of Yokuts, to just name a few. And Yokuts and Mono are terms to identify an area of where Native people reside, but they are not terms to specify one specific tribe. So Yokuts, like my tribe, Picayune, means people in English, right? So Yokuts on the map that is provided is primarily the green area in the Central Valley, which the Yokuts people are Picayune, Table Mountain, Santa Rosa, Tule River, Choinumni, Wuchumni, Dumna, Chowchilla Tribe of Yokuts. And our Mono relatives are North Fork, Big Sandy, Cold Springs, Dunlap Band of Mono Indians. And on the map, you can also see more of our higher mountain relatives listed to the right. Right, so this is just a visual for y'all to see who we're talking about and where we are talking about when we say Yokuts and Mono in our land acknowledgement. And we have presenters today who are occupying native land up and down the San Joaquin Valley, presenters coming from Stockton, Fresno, and Orosi, who are occupying native land of the Yokut and Miwok. Okay, so just wanted to give you guys a better visual of where we are talking about. Of course, California has Native people up and down. And if you weren't aware, California has the most federally recognized tribes within the US, coming in as number 2. Alaska has the most federally recognized, but California is second within the US for federally recognized tribes. And I want to thank Dr. Patricia Lopez for inviting me and giving me this space and time to share a land acknowledgement and speak more about our Native people during this event. Michkais, thank you.
Thank you, Amber. I appreciate you as always for that beautiful land acknowledgement, for raising awareness of the histories and peoples that continue to be suppressed, and it's up to us to remove these practices of erasure. So I thank you for elevating our Native peoples and our local knowledge, and just starting us off with that explicit practice of anti-racism and anti-racist epistemology. So I appreciate you. Buenas tardes, Kualitonali. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us today. This is our second anti-racism teach-in. My name is Patricia Lopez. I'm an assistant professor in the Kremen School of Education and Human Development at Fresno State. I'm also the director of Enseñamos en el Valle Central, which is the honor of sponsoring these ongoing anti-racism dialogues, including today's, which will focus on anti-racist and anti-oppressive pedagogies for and of liberation. For those of you who are here for the first time participating in an event sponsored by Enseñamos en el Valle Central, I want to thank you for being here and note that we are an initiative focused on cultivating future educators and sustaining current educators who embody a commitment to equity, liberation, justice, anti-racism. A very integral part of our approach to cultivating future educators, or what some refer to as growing our own, is an explicit commitment to anti-deficit, anti-racist, and anti-oppressive pedagogies, valuing the service to community, political awareness, and critical civic engagement for public good. These commitments are grounded and informed by a long history of community struggles to access the teaching profession, and for an education system that affirms the racialized experiences and contributions of those it serves. A system that does away with racial, economic, and linguistic hierarchies by first owning the fact that they exist. I want to briefly provide us with a shared definition of anti-racism, a concept with deep roots in abolition, the call to end slavery, and the call for structural changes, and eradicating institutional racism in a post-emancipation society. Anti-racism places a central focus on the deeply embeddedness of racism and white supremacy in systems of power, policies, and everyday practices. Anti-racism is committed to a journey of knowing these narratives, honoring those in past and present that are enduring this country's legacy of colonialism and systemic racism, and unlearning the conditioning of internalized racism, and recognizing that we cannot heal a society of racism without discomfort and devoid of structural changes and explicit anti-racist policies. In the same spirit for our series today, I want to also offer a shared definition of liberation as it pertains to our discussion today, and the ultimate goals and possibilities of anti-racist and anti-oppressive pedagogies. For this, I'm going to call in community pedagogue Paulo Freire, who states that liberation is a praxis or the critical awareness and reflection of individuals upon their world and the actions they take to transform it in anti-oppressive ways. Liberation arrives when the process of sharing and acquiring new knowledge inspires each of us to think critically, when education frees the mind instead of numbing it. Liberation happens in dialogue between students and teacher, and the roles change and you learn from one another. Liberation shapes what it means to be educated by focusing on one's freedom and capacity to reflect on the world they live in. Today, fundamentally, youth in particular are revealing their profound ways of knowing that inspire liberation for both themselves and for the communities from which they belong. And the same can be said for a growing body of anti-racist educators and education advocates, such as those who are joining us today, all of whom have committed to the journey of embodying and enacting anti-racist and anti-oppressive pedagogies and striving for liberation and freedom in their work with youth, their work with communities. Their narratives will lend tangible insights to the complexities and intricacies of navigating historical systems of oppression and how educators in collaboration with youth and community are transforming these spaces at the systems level and interpersonal classroom level, and by extension, the broader communities, so that these spaces are spaces of self-love, of healing and liberation. So on that note of recognizing the power and possibilities of anti-racist and anti-nativist pedagogies, I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful colleague and friend, Dr. Rohit Mehta, who will transition us to the panelists and let us all be inspired to re-envision what is possible in K-12 classrooms in schools. Gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Lopez, for an inspiring welcome to all of us present here tonight and to those watching later. Welcome all to our second teach-in. I'm Rohit Mehta. I'm an assistant professor at Fresno State in the Kremen School of Education with my friend and colleague here, Dr. Patricia Lopez. As we continue our discussion around anti-racism in education in the Central Valley, quite organically, the next steps demand a liberating space for our students to be able to express their knowledge, experiences, and creativity in and beyond schools and community. But making this space possible involves a lot of love and labor. And the people in our webinar tonight embody this work that demonstrates what a pedagogy of liberation looks like. Our speakers tonight, starting from bottom left, going clockwise, Ashley Rojas. Ashley is the executive director of Barrios Unidos in Fresno, California. She is a committed public health and social worker, serving her community and dedicating herself to youth development, leadership, and community health. She leads Barrios Unidos by supporting the youth and their families through nurturing the community, organizing and advocacy, healing culture, and cultivating change. Up next is Amy Sepulveda. Amy is a middle school educator at Fort Miller Middle School and the founder of Chicanx Latinx Student Association on campus, which is designed to prevent the loss of Chicana's Latino cultural identity and improve academic performance through community support, equitable curriculum, and exposure to cultural events. Amy is also dedicates time to Fresno State's Chicana Alumni Club as an executive board member, where she works to raise money for scholarships that benefit Chicanx students in higher education. Our next presenter is Maribel Rosendo Servin. Maribel is committed to social justice, equity, and inclusion work at the secondary level. She's a social science and ethics teacher at East Union High School in Manteca, not far from here where she grew up in Stockton. Maribel has supported the efforts of the Ethnic Studies Now Coalition Sacramento. Up next is J.R. Arimbuanga. J.R. is currently an ethnic studies teacher and organizer in his hometown of Stockton. He has been working alongside high school youth for over a decade in San Francisco and Oakland, where he helped fight for and teach the first ethnic studies high school courses. And finally, Eliana Banuelos. Eliana has been teaching at Orosi High School since 2015, where she'd had the opportunity to teach world history, United States history, advanced placement, United States history. And her biggest passion is advanced placement United States history. All these 5 presenters are joining us here today. Please join me in giving a round of virtual applause for our speakers tonight. Before I hand over to Ashley, our first presenter, I welcome you all to use the chat to introduce yourself and participate in the conversation. If you have questions, use the Q&A feature to add your questions to the queue, which we will ask at the end of the presentations. On that note, I hand it over to our first speaker, Ashley Rojas. Thank you.
Hi, folks. Good evening. My name is Ashley Rojas. I'm the executive director with Fresno Varios Unidos, and I use she or they pronouns, please. I'm gonna walk us through a brief presentation about Fresno Varios Unidos and how we're engaging in anti-racist work with our young people, but really how our young people are leading the way in our work and in our lives. But first, I wanted to share with you some information about who I am. I think it's important to know the folks behind the work, and I want to be sure to let you all know how I arrived to where I am. It is contrary to every statistic that I've ever read that I'm sitting in the seat that I'm in, that I'm the executive director of a community benefit organization serving young people of color in the very neighborhood I was born in. And I mean, I was born in this neighborhood. My 15-year-old mommy, who's in the middle photo on the left hand of your screen there, birthed me all alone in her bedroom after keeping her pregnancy a secret. And so she and I shared those first moments together. And the way she tells it, we made a commitment to each other that we would do whatever it took to rise out of the circumstances we were in. So in every sense of the word, I am my mommy's daughter. I am a Chicana, Chicanx, I'm indigenous, I'm native, I'm queer, I'm a survivor of interpersonal violence, gun violence, structural violence. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I have lots of formal photos of that, but my mommy loves this one here where I'm looking a hot mess with my sarape falling off of my gown. It's her favorite photo from my college graduation. And I went to college carrying a lot of messages from my family that, you know, our whole goal was to get out of the hood and to, you know, make it, to have the resources that we would need to not have to hustle anymore. And when I went to college, I was following those instructions. I thought I would become a nurse and get a good job and do good work, and that was about as much of a vision as I had for myself. And I was 17 and at San Francisco State University, where my world opened up. And it was both healing and deeply challenging to be met with ethnic studies courses, with gender studies courses, with holistic health courses, with community-based public health courses. All the while I was trying to focus on my pre-nursing recs, you know, organic chemistry and microbiology and all of these really hard science courses. But it was Chicano studies and gender studies and it was community-based public health that actually answered the most questions for myself. I didn't know that the history that I had been taught in school was lacking so much. I didn't know that there were reasons that my family had been trapped in poverty for generations. I didn't know about my grandmother's pain in boarding schools where she was asked and more likely told and beaten to not speak her native language. I didn't know a lot of this history because the schools I went to didn't teach me. I started going to Fresno Unified Schools as an 8-month-old. I was attending DeWolf High School, a continuation high school with my mommy. where we went until she finished high school and on to her career. And it was in those early experiences with my mother, whether it was in the lobby of a high school or of a clinic or riding the bus, that I understood that we were being judged, that we were being shamed, and that we were expected to feel embarrassed. People would ask my mother if she spoke English. They would look down on her for having 2 babies at 17. And I noticed how folks looked at my mother. And I noticed the people that loved us, and I could feel the people that despised us. And it was in my body that I knew these things. It wasn't until I was a young adult, 18, 19, 20, 21, in my college experience, that I developed the language to contextualize my experience, that I began to understand why I felt the things that I did. Like many young people learning these things for the first time, I got really angry and I wanted to know why were things the way they were? Why had they been allowed to go on so long? Why was it still happening if we knew better? And it was then that I began a career in adolescent health, teaching in a juvenile hall, and really wanting to, with a lot of urgency, give young people the information that I had, that they are limitless, that they are powerful, and that they are being told mistruths, that they are being told lies, that they are being told falsehoods about who we are, about where we come from, and what we're capable of. And so since I was 18 years old, this has been my work. And I was in San Francisco doing all of this good work. And my little cousin Josiah got jumped walking home from Roosevelt High School. He was starting to rep the Fresno Bulldogs. When you grow up in the East Side, it's something you do. And it was really important to me to come home and to build programs for young men like Josiah, who were being left out, who were being cast aside, who were being forgotten. And that's how I found Fresno Varios Unidos. Fresno Varios Unidos has been serving young people in South Fresno since 1994. And I was fortunate enough to be invited to apply to be the executive director. And after some recruitment processes, I was offered the position. And I could not turn down an opportunity to love on young people in the same neighborhood I was born in, to change the conditions that were impacting all of us for generations. And in my time with Fresno Varios Unidos since November of 2018, we've developed a series of new programs. We've developed a theory of change, and we focus our work on healing first from our trauma so that we can reclaim and transform our narratives. We cultivate brave spaces for young people of color, where we intentionally center their voices and their experiences, and we consciously decenter whiteness. We support young people in reclaiming their power and moving from places of learned helplessness to a place of being activated in their power. We do cultural reintroduction. We know that our school systems are designed to strip us of a cultural identity other than American. And it's really important that our young people are reintroduced to that culture, given opportunities to reconnect and reclaim, as we're all surviving educational systems that are in crisis. We organize to transform the systems that have harmed us, and we cultivate community with an understanding that we are each sovereign, and we are all interconnected. I'm really proud to say that in 2020, we were named the California Nonprofit of the Year for our Assembly District. And we value our young people as the agents of change that they are, instead of objects to change, which is often the way in which they are treated in our educational system. We are organizing, this is a platform, a 6-point platform designed by young people in Fresno. They've surveyed over 2,000 of their peers at this point, and they're calling on our nation, on our state, on our county, and on our local government and on our school district to prioritize their needs. They're asking for life-affirming spaces where their narratives, their experiences, their talents have room to grow. They're asking for healing. Young people are asking for investments into their mental health, into providing them with harm reduction-based substance use education, and more. And they're asking for opportunities for employment. And I want to stress this: young people are not asking to be rescued, but they're asking to be equitably resourced. And it's really important to understand that difference. They understand that to meet all of their dreams, they need their basic needs met. They need safe and affordable housing. They need their parents to be present, meaning our parents need adequate incomes so that they can be home raising our families, and that we need accessible communities. We need our neighborhood infrastructure to be invested into. We need sidewalks and streetlights and crosswalks. And we've recently won free fax for all here in Fresno, California, and luckily a multi-year fight for parks and green space also was just won officially in Fresno, California, with our Parks for All campaign in coalition with Fresno Building Healthy Communities. All of these campaigns were born out of the visions young people have for themselves and one another, for what they know is possible. We emphatically reject the false narratives of scarcity fed to us by those in power. And we know that we are actually abundantly resourced. If we would organize those resources effectively, we could meet all of our needs. And more specifically, a campaign that we're working on right now today is a campaign for police-free schools. And we asked the question around safety for who, because in the narrative against police-free schools, it's often purported that police officers are there to protect students, that they're there to cultivate safety. And what we ask young people, and we ask anybody, what does safety mean to you? It's not often a cop that you think of first and foremost. You think of when you're at rest, when you're at peace, maybe you're relaxing with a friend under a warm blanket at home. Those are the moments we feel safe, we feel at ease, we feel relaxed. And it's really important to know that in Western education, when we talk about safety, we're often talking about protecting or upholding white supremacy. We're talking about safety for those in power. We're talking about comfort for those in power. We're not actually talking about safety or comfort for the young people in our school systems. In Fresno Unified, we're a majority students of color, and yet majority of the staff are not folks of color. And it's really important to understand that when we see our young people as needing to be controlled or coerced or dominated into behaving, we're not actually building relationships with young people in ways that are meaningful and or transformative. We could very easily invest the $3.5 million the school district spends on police officers and criminalizing roughly 124 students a year to better meet the needs of the 64,000 students on campus. It's really important to know that the policing of students is not exclusive to police, but that it extends into the way students are punished. Whether that be for tardiness or absenteeism, falling asleep in class, eating in class, not turning on their Zoom cameras, struggling with distance learning, having living situations that are not supportive or secure, where they're not getting the rest that they need, they're not getting the food that they need, and so they're not able to perform in school the way they would usually if their needs were being met. And so young people are criticized and critiqued and punished for the way that they're showing up. And instead of asking young people what they need or how they are, we move towards disciplinary or punitive strategies because they're the easy button. And this is really, I think, important to understand, because police are being called to campus for things that aren't laws. Cops are there to enforce laws, to mitigate crime, and students are having the cops called on them for truancy, for tardies, for yelling at peers or teachers, for fighting. None of this is illegal, and much of it can be addressed by our educational system, and more importantly, could be addressed by preventative care. And so our campaign, we're going to drop in the chat links to the full report that we've published with Human Impact Partners. It's called Health and Cultural Wealth, Student Protectives on Police-Free Schools in California, in Fresno, California. This is important to note that we centered the voices of young people most impacted by school policing. School districts and folks in opposition of this movement will tell you that all students' voices matter here, and that parents' voices matter here. And while we do believe that students' and parents' voices matter, we certainly do not believe that they matter more than the students who are being directly impacted, and that their voices need to matter more. We're calling on Fresno Unified to terminate all contracts with Fresno PD. We're calling on for the full removal of police officers from school. And we're asking the school district to invest that money into student wellness supports, including trauma-informed practice, restorative and transformative justice processes, health and wellness centers, and to expand our ethnic studies portfolio, as well as continue to actively deinstitutionalize white supremacy from our educational system as a whole. When we're talking about our demand for healing-centered schools, we're saying this is more than a resolution. Declaring yourself an anti-racist institution isn't good enough. You have got to look into the ways in which your policies and practices are upholding institutionalized white supremacy. This means addressing all racial disparities in school discipline, addressing all racial disparities in academic performance, and addressing all racial disparities in student health and wellness. A resolution is a really great start, and it is not enough. We must divest from systems of harm and invest into systems of care. And we're asking for integrated care models that support the social and emotional well-being for youth and families. We know that this is possible because it's happening in schools across the country. And our demand for police-free schools and anti-racist pedagogies aren't unique to Fresno, but they're happening across the Central Valley, our state, and our nation. Young people are not stopping anytime soon. And so we invite all of our friends and partners. We're dropping links into the chat. Join us in a webinar next week. Join our listserv to follow our organization, and follow us on all social media platforms to continue to hear from our young people how they are committed to advancing their anti-racist futures, and more importantly, how they're planning to center their healing and wholeness as they continue their organizing and advocacy. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amy Sepulveda. I am a middle school instructor here in Fresno, where I teach 7th grade world history, and where I am piloting our Introduction to Ethnic Studies course at the middle school level. while also advising our Chicanx Latinx Student Association. If you have any questions or if you need to reach me, please feel free to jot down that email. I know it'll be sent later as a link so that you can connect with me if you have any questions. All right. So when I was asked to participate on this panel, I won't lie, I was a little apprehensive at first because I knew I was going to have to face a lot of the trauma that I experienced as a student in the educational system. I grew up as the daughter of an undocumented mother in a tiny farm town known as Layton here in California. I was also enrolled into a bilingual education program from my kindergarten to 8th grade academic career. And I was lucky enough to have teachers that looked like me and teachers that spoke like me, but that simply isn't enough. I always found myself questioning, why did a safe space feel so unsafe? Now, like most of my family, I decided to get into a job where I felt I could make a difference. So I decided to become a teacher. And when you're in these teaching credential programs, they throw all these inspirational quotes at you. And this is one that really stuck with me. And I'm pretty sure many of you have seen it before. It says, I've learned that people will forget what you've said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And although this is supposed to inspire you and encourage you, I have to admit, when I was faced with this moment of self-reflection, I felt a lot of pain and I felt a lot of rage, thinking back on my own educational experience. Now, a lot of people don't know that through my kindergarten through 6th grade years, I felt intense levels of anxiety that turned into night terrors. My mom was undocumented, so I grew up with the constant fear of not knowing if she was going to be taken away from me. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, constantly having nightmares, running to her bedroom, knocking ferociously there to see if she was still there. I had the worry that someday she'd be taken from me, and my worst fear was that I would never be able to tell her goodbye. And that anxiety translated into the classroom, where I would show up, and as soon as she left me there, or as soon as she was a minute late, I would immediately start to cry, simply because I didn't know what was going to happen to her if I was gone. And how did it feel to be told by teachers to stop crying now? How did it feel when one of my teachers dragged my desk outside of the class, left me there alone, because I was a disruption to the other students? And how did it feel to become a discipline issue, where my teacher called the principal to drag me by my ear at this point in kindergarten outside so I could let other students learn? Nobody ever asked me if I was okay. How did it feel to have teachers tell me that I would never amount to anything? How did it feel to get my education in a segregated campus where the students who spoke Spanish were classified by teachers as the other kids? There were students who would tell us they didn't want to play with us simply because we spoke Spanish, as if it was some type of gross characteristic. And how did it feel to be very uncomfortable being dressed in paper bags and paper feathers and being told that this is the way that we honor Indigenous culture? I actually did a Facebook call, a public Facebook call on my personal account, asking my classmates if they had pictures of this moment in time where our schools promoted Indian Day. And I got a few pictures. And what surprised me is that I actually got an image from Amber, who was our first speaker today, who didn't grow up in Layton, actually grew up here in Fresno. And this day, Indian Day, is actually something that is happening across the valley. And one of the pictures that I received on my personal Facebook account was dated in 2018. So these things are still going on. So when I look at this quote and I reflect and I see how it made me feel, the answer is terrible. And these are not just random memories, right? These are moments in time that reflect the interpersonal along with the systemic oppression that is taking place at these schools. It is a complete disregard for our emotional well-being of our culture and for our liberation. So I had some challenging childhood experiences. A lot of what I just spoke about led to a mental health crisis. My culture and my history was erased inside and outside of the classroom. I had no sense of belonging. I constantly feared that my mother would be taken away from me. And again, my whole K through 8th experience was on a segregated campus. All of this led to internalized racism, a loss of culture, and behavioral issues that led to my expulsion in the 6th grade. And all of these experiences I carry with me as I decided to become an educator. Now, what I noticed is that these issues that I experienced as a child are the same issues that I'm experiencing as an educator within this system. The credential program that I was a part of, all it did was promote this positive illusion that education is this big team where we're all working together for the benefit of the students, and that is simply not true. This program did not provide us as teachers any type of tools on teaching students these tools how to navigate this oppressive system, but also teaching us teachers, and specifically teachers of color, how to navigate this oppressive system. There's lots of racism, which we see in our curriculum. We see it among staff, and we see it within the entire system. There is insufficient social emotional support, and these discipline practices and high level of policing on our campus leads to the school to prison pipeline. So as educators, we need to acknowledge this as a fact. There is a problem within our system, and we must take action. So as a teacher, I promised myself that I hope that I never make my students feel the way that I felt when I was their age. And so I had to make a commitment to become an abolitionist in my teaching, right? And what does this mean? This means that at all levels you are fighting injustice, but you are also not doing it alone. You must bring in members of the community, other educators, your parents, your social workers, your counselors, therapists, artists, right? This beautiful family to help students reach educational freedom. You must also engage in educator activism, right? I've been a mentor teacher for a few years now, and the first piece of advice that I give them is that you must have an educational philosophy that is firm, that you will stand on for your career, with students being placed as the priority, is doing what is right for students. And although this may go against district policies and district mandates, you must investigate these policies and curriculums to create an explicitly anti-racist curriculum. What you see on the screen here is actually the scope and sequence for 7th grade world history. Everything that is highlighted in yellow is European history. And this adds up to 75% of the year. While you see African history and the Americas listed with only a few days. And at my site, around 70% of our students are Chicanx, Latinx, and out of the whole year, they are only taught 8 days worth of their history. So this is a problem, and we need to get rid of it, and we need to know that it exists in order to change it, right? Become an advocate for your students, become a trauma-informed educator that again places the students' well-being above these district rules. We can also create youth-led programs, which is what I did with our Chicanx Latinx Student Association. I started it because in 2017, when I walked onto campus, I asked what resource do we have available for the Chicanx Latinx demographic, which is the largest demographic on our campus, and the answer was nothing. So in 2017, we started with 36 students. In 2018, it jumped to 137. And in 2019, it jumped to 212 students who wanted to enroll in this program. Now, COVID happened after this, so I don't have the numbers, but we're adapting to that. Now, through this program and by connecting with the community, we were able to do things that the district could not provide for us or was not willing to provide for us. I was willing to take children to Sacramento to advocate for childcare rights, where they were able to speak to our legislators and use their voice to ask for change. We partnered with the Oakland A's for their reading program, where students were reading books that were written by people like them and reflected their experiences. My students partnered with Univision to become student reporters for a few of their events. My students have worked with Fresno State's Chicano Alumni Club. We do monthly community service with the Fresno Center at the Community Food Bank. There's weekly cultural workshops. We've been on many field trips, such as the Mexican Art Museum, the Museum of Tolerance, and we planned a trip to Washington, D.C., where along with community support, we were able to raise enough money for all of our students to attend. Unfortunately, COVID kind of ruined that, but we were able to do that. And the only thing that we were met with by the district was resistance. Funding has always been an issue. Funding has always been an issue. And for a club my size, 212 students, we're only able to receive $50 a year. And if you divide that, that is less than 25 cents per student, which shows how much they're willing to invest in our students of color. Let me move this here. Sorry for that. There's also been an active effort to censor what we do. We were doing morning announcements for a while with celebrations of Chicanx, Latinx people, right? And we were asked not to do that. Teachers on campus created a petition to get rid of our Chicano power shirts, the ones that you see our students wearing here on the screen. There was a staff member who told my students that them and their families deserved to be in cages if they were undocumented. There was another teacher who suggested if there's a Chicano power group on campus, why can't there be a white power group on campus? And there's also teachers who have said that the Black students on our campus are the exact representation of a stereotype, which is lazy and will not amount to anything. So these are things that are happening on our campuses, and there has not been any protocols or pathways for our sites to take when this type of resistance occurs or when these racist interactions occurs with staff and students. And that is why we have had to turn to the community for support, which is a part of liberating our students, is connecting them to people and resources who will have their back. So here, as I mentioned earlier, we've partnered with the Chicano Alumni Club, with Express Arte, with the Fresno Center here, to practice being a part of our community and becoming agents of change. And as I mentioned earlier, with the situation with the staff member who said our students deserve to be in cages, when I and students took this issue to the office, it was being swept under the rug until we were able to bring in Fresno Barrios Unidos and our community support to actually put pressure and to do what was right. We can also advocate for ethnic studies programs, right? And for me, it was a challenging issue because I had to personally advocate for this to be on my campus, to the point where I told my principal, if I don't get to teach ethnic studies, I'm not coming back next year. And thankfully, I was able to get a few sections for my site. And this has been a transformative and healing part of my own journey, is to be able to teach this in my classroom and to hear these experiences, to connect students to their own history of power and resiliency, to have a safe space to discuss issues such as race, ethnicity, these systems of power, and of course, to equip them with the tools for change, to become activists, right? And to see themselves as a member of the community. Now, here are some examples of what my 7th graders and 8th graders have turned in as a part of their ethnic studies class. And one of my experiences was a colleague of mine saying that we didn't need ethnic studies on campus because 7th and 8th graders did not understand what's going on in the world right now. And through these examples, you can see that they do and that they have a lot to say about it. And through this class, they're being provided with the language to weaponize their experiences as tools of empowerment, to see themselves reflected and to become themselves and to be proud of that, you know? And as you see, students are loving the class, and it's just been an amazing experience for me. And recently we were studying the Chicano student walkouts in the 1960s. And one of the questions that I asked my students at the end of the lesson was, what is a right that you would want to fight for, right? As a student, what is something that you want to fight for? Student rights. And this was their response. They said students should have the right to be respected for their differences. Students should learn about the stuff that relates to us. For all of us to be treated the same. Students should be able to speak up when there's a problem. As you see, you should be able to correct the teacher if they're wrong without going to the office. So these are rights they said they would fight for, which implies that these are rights they feel that they don't have at the moment. And this is still reflective of the same experience that I have experienced as a child. And it demonstrates that these things are not okay. We need to do better, and it requires us to take action. So I leave you with a few steps on how to practice these things in your classroom, starting with yourself. To become an anti-racist educator and to practice these anti-oppressive pedagogies, you must self-reflect. That's where it begins. From there, you must address these curricular gaps so that students feel represented in what they are being taught. Build that community in your classroom, focus on social emotional learning, and bring in the family, bring in the community so that there is an actual support system there that it will build your students up. And I know this is a lot. I know this is challenging, and I know that it's scary. I've been there, but please do not be afraid. You are not alone. It took me a while to really understand that I wasn't alone, that I had more people out there like me that I could lean on for support. And it's truly, truly inspired me to do more, and it's made me more confident in the work that I do. So even if it feels like that, I'm letting you know right now, I handed you my email to reach out if you need somebody to talk to, because as teachers of color, we need that support, and it isn't offered often in professional development or in these team building exercises. So find your squad and find your network. And ultimately, our job is to do what is right for the students. And sometimes that requires you to break a lot of the rules, and you just got to be okay with that. So thank you so much. I appreciate this space. Thank you to everybody who showed up today. And if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eliana Banuelos, and I am just going to be building off the awesomeness of Amy because she just knocked it out of the park. A lot of what she said is things I'm going to be touching on. So I'm Eliana Banuelos, as I mentioned earlier, and I want to start off with giving you guys a little bit of information about me. I currently teach at Orosi High School, which is a small, rural, unincorporated community. It's about 50 minutes away from Fresno. I have been teaching there since January of 2015. And I am originally from Delano, California. That's where I was born and raised. I got my bachelor's from Fresno State, and I'm currently getting my master's there in history. I'm a first gen, just like many people on the panel, and that has become a huge part of my identity. The picture on the top is my lovely mother, who are the shoulders I stand on. She and my father are from Mexico, and my mom raised us all by herself. I not only was the first person to attend college in my family, I was the first person to graduate high school. And there was so many things fighting against, me as far as, and like every one of us, things in worlds that we have to learn how to navigate. And so pretty early on, I knew I wanted to be an educator because I wanted to help students gain the knowledge and, the tools to navigate like a very foreign land, or what seemed like a very foreign land. At Orosi High School, I do many things that happens when you work in a very small school for a very small community. I teach AP US history, I teach regular US history. I have experience teaching world history, and I also teach and work with the AVID program on our campus, which has become my biggest passion, because it has allowed me to it's allowed me to advocate and teach first generation kids how to navigate college and give them resources. And so even though I am a history person and that's my nerd thing, I absolutely love AVID and everything that it stands for. As far as my angle and what I want to really focus on today is talking about anti-racism in our curriculum as educators. I went through the credential program at Fresno State, and it was something that was not very much talked about at all. And so I'm really excited that we have webinars and things like this that are talking about it, because when I received my credential in 2013, 2014, it feels like it's been forever, these were just like little murmurs of conversations that were happening. And it's important to understand as educators, the racist systemic things that that make up the system and our curriculum. Curriculum, I don't mean to be blunt about it, but I am, is really made up of, knowledge and information that has been given to us by dead old white men. And anti-racism is something that can be dissected and taught at every subject in every level. When you look at classes like health, you can talk about with students who has had access to healthcare and, medical, healthcare, obviously. When you talk about English, you can talk about and look at the readings and the curriculum that you give students. What are the books that we give our kids to read? The readings are the glimpses to the world that they have. And if we're giving them a very, narrow view, then obviously, we're not doing a very good job of showing them what the world is like. In math, when we teach math, I know some of us may think like, how can we address anti-racist systems in math? But when we look at things like statistics, we can tell kids and talk about who is included when data is often looked at. Who is left out of this picture? How is information gotten? And how are these numbers used to weaponize, or not necessarily weaponize, but like, target is the word I'm trying to say here. And what it comes naturally, and which comes down to the subject that I teach, history, when I think of, and when I, deeply want to understand anti-racism systems, history serves as a great place to look at that, because history classes offer us the opportunity to have those conversations with students and help them understand how systems are built and why the world around them is the way that it is. And so that is where my focus will be for the most of this presentation. This is a glimpse of the curriculum at my site. I became the department chair this year, and I knew one of the first things I wanted to tackle was how Eurocentric our curriculum was. And so what you guys are looking at is a very kind of bird's eye view of our world history units. The very first unit, as you can see, is insanely Eurocentric. What we go through with our kids is the foundation of democracy, Greece, Roman, Judeo-Christian values. We have a whole unit on the French Revolution. We have a whole unit on the rise of totalitarians. But of course, these are all very European views. And so rarely, especially in this curriculum, are counter narratives given. And what I mean by counter narratives are the stories that are often left out when we talk about historical events. And so as a department chair with my team, one of the ways that we felt we could best tackle this issue is by approaching history in a thematic way, to be able to facilitate and have conversations with students about issues and problems that keep arising throughout time. And so what we have done is, instead of tackling history linearly, we tackle it thematically. And so our units now sort of look like this, where we have a unit on democracy and revolutions. And we get to have conversations with students about why revolutions happened. How are government systems built unfairly? Why do people get so angry and feel like they have to dismantle everything and violently? We have a whole unit on imperialism and in colonialism. How does that happen? Why does that happen? Who gets, left behind? Who, what countries are built on the backs of people, and how exactly does that happen? We have a whole unit on genocide and capitalism. And so what I provided in the bottom are examples of what are some of the things we talk about when we talk about revolutions, for example. And we wanted to make this more inclusive. So we have kids read things and learn about Arab Spring and all that kind of stuff, because again, usually when we think about history, like all other subjects in curriculum, we think about it in a very European way. And since I teach US history, I'm able to talk a little bit more comfortably about that. And so this is the units, like our unit overview for US history. And we have also taken a thematic approach for this. And it allows us to have conversations with our kids about, again, major problems and issues that are happening right now. So an example of a unit is, what is American democracy and what should it be? You get to have conversations with kids about, like, what is democracy? And are all men created equal? And what does it mean when we say man? We get to have units that talk about capitalism and what are the bad things about capitalism? And who are the people that have been stomped and oppressed and killed to build empires for? We talk about identity. We talk about how, we use the word we a lot in America, but what does we mean? And again, it has allowed for very, very amazing and very insightful conversations, because oftentimes as adults, as educators, we forget that our students are fully functional human beings who have thoughts and feelings of their own. And we have to connect all of this, provide a safe space, and also show relevancy to today. And so that's one of the things I often try to do, is connect these what seem to be ancient things to what is happening now, because everything is built on itself. And it's just like that added, the old quote that says, the system isn't broken, it's built that way. And deeply showing kids and having them understand how these systems, these oppressing systems, have been built. And so this is an example of a lesson that I did not too long ago in my history class, where we were looking at the civil rights in the 1960s. And the pictures that you guys see on the left are the people who were fighting against integration in the 1950s and 60s. And then the pictures that you guys see on the right are pictures that were taken about last year, when a lot of people were protesting anti-COVID masks mandates and anti-COVID rules. And so this serves as an example of when I was talking to my students about civil rights, how a lot of the arguments that were based on anti-integration was this idea that the South wanted states' rights, and how they believed that the states should be able to dictate what their people, should and shouldn't do, and they shouldn't have to listen to the federal government. And again, how these problems continue to happen over and over again. And it's really important as educators that we allow students and give students the space to connect these events and these issues. And that's why I believe that teaching history thematically and having kids talk about these oppressive systems are really, really important because they see them too. So what you guys are looking at now is at a student response that I gave in the presentation to my kids. The question I asked them was, what is a previous or current example of when states pushed back against federal laws? And my student responded with the idea that the South pushed back during Reconstruction when slavery was being abolished. And again, seeing them and understanding that racist systems have been built and have been there from the very beginning. This is another example of, other opportunities that I've given my students. I presented them a quote and I asked them to connect that quote to the material that we were talking in class. This quote right here is from the book, The Devil You Know, A Black Power Manifesto by Charles Blow. And the book examines how Black oppression has happened throughout the United States and offers personal solutions to how to fix this problem. And the reading itself is a little extreme, but it provided a very interesting conversation with my students. It is important to find, as teachers, rich, diverse materials when teaching our subjects. And a lot of the times that is not going to be in our textbook. One of the things that I learned a lot, specifically in my master's program, and we talked about it a little bit in the credential program in Fresno, was that textbooks at the end of the day are made by companies that are making money and companies that are trying to fit, that are trying to be sold massively. And certain states are more comfortable talking about certain topics like racism and slavery, and certain states are not. And so when you look at like history curriculum, for example, a lot of states, specifically Southern states, have a very hard time saying that the Civil War started because of slavery. And so a lot of textbooks, in order to make sure that they can secure those cells in the South, have said that Civil War started not because of slavery, but because of states' rights issues. And so that is a really good example of how, again, these racist systems and information and are just, embedded in our curriculum and how they're not allowing for conversations to happen. And so if we don't, as a society, talk about racism, if we don't see things for what they are and call them out for what they have been, healing can't begin. And so that's often a topic we talk about with my students. And so a lot of the times in my class, I no longer rely on the textbook, but I rely on primary and secondary sources. I use books that I have read in during my bachelor's and books that I'm reading in my master's. And later I will be providing some resources if you guys are interested, but I cannot stress enough how important it is to provide a diverse and rich curriculum to our students that goes outside the textbooks. It really does help fight Eurocentrism. And at the end of the day, our classes serve as glimpses to the world and the human experience. And if we don't provide our students with those glimpses of the world and of other people's experiences, we are really doing them a huge disservice. And so in this activity, I gave a quote from the book and I asked my students to respond. This quote in this from this particular page that I took talks about how Blacks in the South fled the devil they knew to the North, and they were faced with a different type of devil. And I asked students to talk about what is Charles Blow, the author, referring to. And this is an example of a response I got from students. A lot of the times, and Amy mentioned this in her presentation, other educators that feel very, very uncomfortable talking about, anti-racism in the classroom say things like, students are not ready for these types of conversations. They can't have those types of conversations. They don't know enough to say, A, B, or C. But the reality is our kids see the world for what it is. And they have so many questions and they want to have so many different types of conversations. And it is important for us to provide that for them. A really rich resource that I would really suggest giving, especially for history people, is a website called Anti-Racist APUSH, which stands for AP US History. This is just awesome in giving different types of narratives and perspectives for students in your classroom, especially when trying to figure out how to tackle history. And so I know that will be placed in the chat. And then I am running very, very short on time, so I'm going to skip some of the slides because I believe I'm a little over, right, my moderators?
Yeah, if we can start wrapping up. Thank you, Eliana.
Yeah, for sure. So the last thing I want to end here is one of the things that I developed because I felt the deep necessity of it was a racial literacy unit. And for this, I didn't know where to begin. I created a whole unit where I gave students resources on, what is racism, what types of racism exists, what is systemic racism, and how they can see that through housing, education, through jobs. And so it really allowed for, like I said, a really, really great experience in having conversations with kids because they have so many questions, they want to know. And if we don't give students the vocabulary to talk about the problems that are in the world, how can they advocate for themselves? And so what you're looking at is at a piece that a student made at the end of the unit, because I had them do a review where they compiled the most important parts of the unit to make a sketch note little poster. And this is one of the pieces that my Asian American students made, which they did a little bit before COVID hit and everything was shut down. And he was trying to grapple with not only his identity, but seeing the deep discrimination that was happening in his community. Yeah. So thank you very, very much for listening to my talk. I hope my email is dropped in the chat, and I'm very, very sorry for going over.
I'm just looking for my PowerPoint really quick. There we go. Okay. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maribel Rosendo Servic. I'm an ethnic studies teacher and social science teacher at East Union High School. And today I'm going to be focusing a lot on creating spaces on campus, creating allies, creating a team, something that I've learned and was taught through just my experience organizing as an undergrad, but also in my teaching credential program at Sac State. A little bit about my journey. My journey is really important to share with students. This is a process that I engage with young people in our first unit in ethnic studies and really in everything that I teach, both in world history, geography, any content, because I think this is a piece that really builds and centers student stories. We go through a process of contextualizing their experiences first. So we go through a unit of talking about critical consciousness through Paulo Freire's lens and really talking about, a magical consciousness, naive, what does that mean? And then also really looking at contextualizing systems and structures and ideologies that become a part of our experience, but most importantly, that they can be able to name, right, in their stories, and then also relate to other young people. So this is a process that we go through to humanize our stories, but then also to challenge these systems of oppression that we've been taught to believe either and internalize ourselves. So my name is, again, Maribel, go by Mari. I was born in León, Guanajuato, Mexico. My family's from two ranchos, El Pocono and Frias, Guanajuato. This is my family. I do what I do for them, and definitely have shaped who I am today. I am the eldest in my family, also first generation, and much of my experiences have definitely been shaped by my experience growing up in Stockton. As a first generation, the eldest in the family growing up, navigating the system in the south side of Stockton, as an example. And I want to say that as a high school student, like many others have mentioned, there were a lot of things happening in our community that teachers were not talking about, right? And you would hear a lot of deficit thinking about our community, about our families, and not really interrogating the systems and structures happening in a city that were creating these experiences, right? And so they were normalizing a lot of the journeys of young people that unfortunately had to navigate, right? And so one experience that has really shaped what I do at a high school level was getting involved in Mecha as a high school student. That was that one teacher that helped me and or inspired me to go on to college. And it was the only one teacher that really helped, like quite literally took me to campus, Sac State in particular, to fill out college applications. So definitely want to give a shout out to him. Experiences that, growing up that I really carry, that have definitely shaped what I do and why I went into teaching, and why, community for me is so important. When I was 4 years old, I remember and I recall having to come to the United States and cross the border. And I do share these images as close as to what I can remember, right? I do remember crossing the border with my mom and my younger brother and my aunt when I was 4 years old. And I remember, running, hiding, and I remember being caught and being sent to a detention center. So those experiences like really carried with me. We were sent back, we came back, and then I remember crossing the river and being on a canoe. And that, experience again really carried with me throughout my elementary school in particular, and growing up, right, in the era of Pete Wilson and Prop 187 was really intense, right? And so the role of teachers in the elementary school level to give us language to be able to defend and, humanize our experience was very critical, right? As I think back, there was a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment. Kind of reminds me of, past years that we've seen and experienced. And so it was really powerful that the teachers were there to step in and challenge that, right? I was undocumented as an elementary school student, so in Stockton at that time, there was a lot of immigration and ICE in the community. I do remember an experience, being followed with myself and my mom. And so for me, at an elementary school level, going to school was not my first priority, right? First was staying safe and making sure that my mom in particular and other family members, were not being deported, just knowing that I had had that experience before. So later on, oops.
I'm so sorry, Maribel. I didn't mean
no,
to interrupt. We're having a little bit of feedback from your sound.
Oh,
Would you mind trying muting yourself and maybe unmuting to see if that'll correct the issue?
you know what? It might be my computer, because my computer is not that great. And it makes a noise. I don't know if it...
Yes, and we can hear it, and it's kind of drowning out your voice a little
Oh,
bit.
it is.
It is.
Okay. Let me see. I don't know. Let me see if I...
Do you have it plugged in?
I do.
Maybe if you unplug it.
Okay.
If it has battery, of course, we don't want to lose you.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try it out this way. I'm not sure if I can get rid of that noise.
It went away for a second.
You can still hear it.
I can still hear it, but I know that what you're going to share is really important. Maybe if you could speak a little bit louder and see if we can support you somehow.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead and share screen again.
Okay. All right, hopefully, please let me know. I'll be checking my. Okay. All right, so I wanted to also mention an experience that really was really transformative. That a high school teacher, my mentor advisor, took me to Mr. Viramontes at Franklin High School, took me to see Rigoberta Menchú. And I was a senior, 17-year-old, and I had never met or seen anyone like her and speak the ways that she spoke, and just talking about her experience and her journey and her life commitment to social justice, freedom and liberation for Indigenous people. So as a 17-year-old, she had a huge impact on me because for my K-12 experience, I had never learned the history of an Indigenous woman such as herself do, what she does, right? And so the perception of going to college and, being successful was something that, there was like that stereotypical image that we were accustomed to. And so she definitely transformed my experience. And, I remember from that day on, I made a commitment in the same way that those teachers in elementary and high school made that commitment to ensure that they would challenge that system and uplift young people in their experience.
We still hear the feedback. Do you have Zoom on your phone? Maybe you can call in and mute the computer, but use your phone as a speaker if you think that's possible.
I think I can. Yeah. Let me see.
We apologize for the technical difficulties and really appreciate your patience.
Let's see. Should I just have JR go first while I get that set up? Or,
Dr. Lopez, Dr. Mehta, what do you think? Yeah,
sure, Mari. We can let JR go, and then we'll finish up when you come back on.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mari. Thank you, Gladys. JR, do you have your ready to share screen?
I'm ready. Can everybody hear me and see the screen? Beautiful. So, good evening, everybody. Can everybody throw a number 1 in the chat and send my good homegirl Mari some love as we navigate these tech issues? Y'all know how it is. Thank you for showing love to Mari. Good evening, everybody. I am blessed and humbled to be in such incredible space and company today. My name is J.R. Arimbuanga. I go by he, him pronouns. I'm currently the Stockton Unified School District's Ethnic Studies teacher on special assignment. And I'll be talking more so about the institution and how do we work with this institution, right, that historically has not served us. in service of our young people with ethnic studies, right? And so I want to, of course, acknowledge that I am standing on Miwok and Yokut's land that we now call Stockton, California, and that ethnic studies, its whole service is to make sure we recognize that the Miwok, the Yokuts, and the other indigenous people, Native people all across the world are still here, and ethnic studies works in service of decolonization, right? I also want to make sure that I'm talking a little bit about my story, just like those who came before me, right? This was me at 15 and a half. I wanted to be anything but Filipino. Growing up in Stockton, I had no idea who I was or any connection to my history as a Filipino American, right? It was interesting because, you know, if you know any history about Stockton, it was the largest concentration of Filipino Americans outside of the Philippines, right? From the 20s all the way through the 60s. And I didn't know any of that history. And so growing up in Stockton, right before the recession of 2008, right, going to high school, was confronted with, you know, 2 fights a day, a lot of it horizontal violence against each other, right? A lot of poverty, a lot of gang violence, people losing their homes. And here I am not making sense of who I am as a Filipino American, as a second generation Filipino American, right? And so, you know, I'm standing here as one person, but I represent an incredible city of Stockton, California. Throw a #1 in the chat from my Stockton folks. I see some folks repping in the space. And Stockton is a historically segregated city like most cities out there. What you see in red, right, where these neighborhoods that Black, Indigenous, and people of color were actually only allowed to live, right? And it wasn't until after the Civil Rights Movement that we started to integrate. And my family moved to Stockton post 1965 Immigration Act. And part of that privilege to live on the Northeast side, but bust in, right, as kids of color to the white district, right, historically Lodi Unified. And I say that because luckily it was the help of a mentor in high school who helped me get to San Francisco State. That was me on the left, where I majored in ethnics, at first in photography and art, and then eventually found ethnic studies, right? And really connected to the movement and the history and the legacy of ethnic studies as a birthplace of ethnic studies, and still today, the first and only college of ethnic studies. I also connected with other dope and incredible POC young people also coming into their consciousness, right? Lucky to be a part of the Pinoy Panay Educational Partnership. Shout out to those folks. Lucky to help be part of the New Front Coalition, bringing together different POC and young people across the campus, organizing some of the early walkouts around student cuts and budget cuts. And so it was with this that I understood that in order to really create change, it really starts with education, right? And with the help of the Pinoy Panay Educational Partnerships, mentors like Alison Tintingago Cubales, Dr. Jeff Duncan Andrade, Dr. Don Mabalon, the late Dr. Don Mabalon, I was able to make my way to grad school, right? So I majored in ethnic studies and minored in history at San Francisco State, went over to the University of San Francisco, where I earned my master's in teaching urban education and social justice. Soon after, I helped to fight for and grow the first ever survey of high school ethnic studies courses in California at in San Francisco Unified. And then soon after in East Oakland, I was teaching at a Rise High School, where I helped to fight for and grow and teach the first ethnic studies program in Oakland Unified as well. And so I was lucky to come back home to Stockton after about a decade of teaching ethnic studies in the Bay in service of our own and our own new growing ethnic studies program. And so I want to take some time to just read what ethnic studies means to Stockton Unified. So ethnic studies is the intersectional examination of historic and contemporary Native narratives, contributions, struggles, and resistance by Black, Indigenous, and people of color, as well as other marginalized communities. The ethnic studies program is composed of historical and sociological content that analyzes how colonialism, race, and racism have been and continue to be powerful social, cultural, and political forces. Ethnic studies analyzes the intersectionality of identity, including race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic class, sexuality, and belief systems, amongst others. As a community-focused program, we highlight the local narratives and history of Stockton and make connections with national and global events. Ethnic studies empowers students to become ethical, effective, and empathetic social justice artists, activists, scholars, and leaders who speak truth to power. And I want to take some time to walk you through the journey to how our program has grown today. And so we know through our research that some of the original Third World Liberation Front strikers who founded at the College of Ethnic Studies were actually from Stockton, and soon after came back home to Delta College to start the Ethnic Studies program there. It was actually the third higher ed institution in the country to do so. It wasn't until about 2009 that the Little Manila After School program, now called Little Manila Rising, helped to institute an after-school program at Edison High School. In 2016, a group of scholars and teachers here started US History, Comparative Ethnic Studies after-school program at Edison. And with the community involvement, institutionalized the actual course in our district in 2017. That started at a few sites. And in 2019, it moved into all of our 4 big comprehensive sites. And then in 2019, again, the community fought to strengthen ethnic studies, which included my position as a teacher on special assignment to help coordinate the program, making sure the program was at all of our sites, partnering with Delta College for dual enrollment, which I'll talk about in a little bit, rehashing and revitalizing some of the curriculum with our community to make it more Stockton-centered, and making sure that teachers who taught the class had background in ethnic studies, right? That's a really important piece. And so this year, I'm going to talk a little bit of the work that we've been doing. Just again, shout out to the people and the communities that fought for my right to be here today, right, in 2017. And shout out to the folks, I see Donald in the space, what's up fam, who fought for it to strengthen ethnic studies in 2019. This is a community effort, right? When I talk about our ethnic studies principles, I'm talking about 7 in particular. We're talking about love and respect, hope, solidarity, reflection, critical consciousness, community, and transformation. And these are the principles that lay the foundation of our work, that everything that we do will be returned back to these principles, right? Currently, we're lucky to have ethnic studies at 7 of the high school sites. Over almost 1,200 students will take the course by the end of the semester, 38 different sections, 13 teachers total. There are 4 main components to our program. You have myself as the ethnic studies teacher on special assignment, but I'm really just a facilitator, right? Moving clockwise, we have our Ethnic Studies Community Collaborative that I'll be talking a little bit about in just a second, that help to drive the direction and root our program in the community. We have our Ethnic Studies Teacher Steering Committee that helped me to navigate this bureaucracy of our district. And then we have our Ethnic Studies Curriculum Development Team that's constantly working, right, on curriculum and curriculum adoption. I want to shout out the 95+ Stockton Unified School District students, parents, staff, alumni, professors, community members who are part of our Ethnic Studies Community Collaborative, some of them in the space, who help to drive, again, the focus, the direction, the vision of our program. We have 4 subcommittees, a Native American, an African American and Black, a Latinx, and an Asian American and the Pacific Islander subcommittees that also help to drive our work. And I know that the fam will be dropping in the chat. Some folks want to know about like what's being taught, right? And how are we getting there? And so we looked at a lot of ethnic studies programs across the country, from Oakland and SF that I were a part of, but to also to Boston, right? And Oregon and New Haven, shout out to those folks, and Ivan and the crew, to LA, Indiana, Sac City, right? To inform our framework, right? Like how do we move and navigate as an institution, as a program? This framework includes our description, our principles, our outcomes, our teacher pedagogy, and some standards that we co-created with our community collaborative. And these all take into consideration our state standards, right? So a lot of folks might be wondering, like, where do our state standards come in? We definitely make sure that we represent those standards, but also we make sure that we represent that Fair Education Act, right? SB 48 and the California State Common Core Literacy, but also some of the model curriculum, right? The 2nd and the 3rd draft. With our community collaborative, we've developed these goals this year, next year, and 5 to 10. And I just want to take us through that journey a little bit. We obviously want to build community involvement in the curriculum and the vision of the program. mentor, coach, support our ethnic studies teachers individually and as a district, work on adopting new curriculum, right, informed by students, teachers, families, staff, and community at all times. We have monthly after school curriculum meetings and intentional teacher community building as a district. We go on a hike and a meal every month. We support the promotion and outreach of the program, right? This piece is part of this work that we do as a community, right? We also want to make sure that we're documenting and making sure we're collecting data, right, to assess the impacts of the program, to not only make sure that we can stay around, right, but also to make sure we can grow. We're hosting an end of the year biannual Ethnic Studies Student Summit that I'll talk about in a little bit. And then of course, summer PD for current and incoming Ethnic Studies teachers. And I'm so happy, right, to announce that we are all working on or have completed all of these goals with the help of all of our team members, part of our program. Next year, we'll be working on continual refinement of the curriculum and program. We're going to continue to implement ethnic studies because right now it's the standalone intro G elective, but we're going to start implementing it intentionally in social science and histories and English language arts and other high school departments. We're also starting a TK through 8 cohort of teachers, right, to begin implementing pedagogy and content in the elementary and middle school areas. Continue that PD, not only for ethnic studies teachers, but non-ethnic studies teachers as well, because we know we're always in the process of becoming. We're going to be starting a robust dual enrollment partnership with San Joaquin Delta College, right? Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx, Chicano studies, Black studies, Asian American and Pacific Islander American studies, Native American studies. Students get college credit for also taking these courses, and it also counts toward graduation credit, right? We're also working on specialty courses to offer for juniors and seniors. So more Chicana, Chicanx, Chicano studies, African American and Black studies, Native American Indian studies, Asian American and Pacific Islander American studies. And then of course, we wanna continue to show evidence that we're increasing attendance, GPAs, college applications, attendance, and other positive outcomes, again, verified through this independent research and data collection that we actually wrote into our resolution in 2019. In 5 to 10 years, we want to see a robust ethnic studies department at the district, right? Working across disciplines, across grades, work on an ethnic studies educational pathway, not just for ethnic studies, but for all educational roles and subject areas and social justice careers in Stockton. We need to grow our own, right? We want to decrease the school to prison pipeline by providing positive intervention for young people and create a school to social justice pathway for Stockton. We want to minimize this brain drain from Stockton, encouraging our students to come back and be engaged and empowered locally. Again, continuing to work on core curriculum, infusing ethnic studies throughout the grade levels and disciplines, continuing to offer year-round PD, and then really at the end of the day, aligned with our district's vision to lift students out of poverty for better health outcomes, for better economic outcomes, for better lives, right? And so how are we informing our curriculum? We asked the community, what would they like to know? Right? And we had a survey that's still open for any of our Stockton folks who'd like to contribute ideas to the curriculum, and we're constantly using that to inform our curriculum development process. And I want to just shout out, because again, I don't stand here by myself, our incredible curriculum development team, Aldrich Sabak, Dr. Anita White, Dr. Alberto Gutierrez, Celine Lopez, Christina Mitchell, Crescent Limon Sorby, CJ, Chris Torres, Dinah Clark, Gustavo Gonzalez, Dr. Inez Ruiz Huston, Jada Johnson, Kaylee Lewis, Lee Shong, Marco Rojas, Oscar Garibay, Philip Merlot, Rashad Nassour, Soteri Chia, and Tejpal Banawal, right? We're also working with some incredible ethnic studies consultants, Hecat Wind Philosophies, Veronica Valadez, and Gabriela Orozco, who are helping us to co-facilitate these PDs and our curriculum development for this new intro curriculum adoption and our future specialty courses. And I want to share some positive data that we collected in the fall, right? 83% of students said that ethnic studies helped them feel proud about their history and culture. 90% enjoyed taking the class. 85% would recommend other students take ethnic studies. 92% said that because of ethnic studies, they have a better understanding of other cultures and communities different from their own, right? You can read more of that, that data on our Instagram and our Facebook, and I'll post that at the end. just want to read a couple quotes that we did from some interviews, right? The one on the right says, I think it's really good now that we have ethnic studies today because there's a lot more generations coming up. And this is the way I feel. I think ethnic studies classes should honestly be required because even if you don't want to hear it, that's the thing. Not a lot of people want to hear the truth, and the truth is what needs to be heard. And I think that's why I think ethnic studies classes need to be around. I think they should have been out years and years ago, right? From 11th grade student. I really like this quote on the right, and I'm wrapping up just a few more slides. For future plans, I really want to major in ethnic studies and hopefully go to SF State. After college, I really want to come back to Cesar Chavez High School and teach ethnic studies there. I really like this school because it's my school, and it would really be nice to go back and be like, oh my gosh, I used to be a student here. And now it's nice to teach future students about ethnic studies. Stockton always has a negative stigma around it. From a young age, I was told, oh, you don't really need to be here. It's not that great of a place to live in. So coming back and proving that I'm from Stockton, I was able to be successful. I really want to better the community so that there isn't that much of a stigma within the community because it's always seen as toxic, right? Some final slides. With the work of our community, we've adopted a Mexican American history course to start in the fall. So if you know any juniors and seniors at Edison High School in Stockton, make sure you have them enroll with their counselor, with Mr. Gonzalez, to take that pilot course. We have dual enrollment again starting in partnership with Delta College, these incredible courses in college credit. And then shout out to our community collaborative for planning our first biannual virtual ethnic studies student summit titled We Are Here, History, Ethnicity, Resistance, and Empowerment, coming on May 12th, 2021. It's all being informed and led by our students, this entire piece. Panel, intergenerational ethnic studies panel, performances, DJ, raffle prizes, community-led workshops, right, coming in. And then, you know, just to look forward, right? Like, I think sometimes we need to make sure we're celebrating our wins, that we have this incredible TK through 8 cohort coming down the line. We have ethnic studies and history and social science and ELA, PD coming down the line. We have the Stockton Cultural Wealth Project in partnership with the San Joaquin Historical Museum and Society. We're going to be documenting and sharing the wealth of stories of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in Stockton. Look out for that project and that open public submissions coming in the fall. Again, these specialty courses for juniors and seniors. And then this is what I'm really excited about, is this SUSD Ethnic Studies Educational Pathway in collaboration with Sac State's Ed Equity Program, the Accelerated College Entrance Program, and the Office of Equity and Student Services, San Joaquin Delta College. So our students will receive college credit, so more college credit and training to support their hopes of educational careers in Stockton Unified. So again, how do we create that pathway? And so I know I talked a lot and I went through a bunch of slides, but my name is J.R. Ademwanga. This is my email. I'm more than happy to dream up ways that you can begin or strengthen your ethnic studies programs in your district. Please follow us on Instagram, our Facebook page. This is our website, and I'm sure that'll be dropped in the chat. And I also help to facilitate the High School Ethnic Studies Network on Instagram, or High School Ethnic Studies. You might have been part of or seen that high school block party that we hosted last spring. So thank you all so much. I appreciate the love. Feel free to reach out, and hopefully everything's all good with Mari. Peace, y'all.
Thank you, JR. You ready to go, Mari?
Yeah, let me know if you can hear me.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. All right. Let me see, let me try. Okay, with that, just like supporting, man, the powerful work that JR is doing in Stockton, much love and respect. Like, that's definitely what we needed as young people. I know that as a 17-year-old, and this is a professor that I want to share, when I took my first ethnic studies course at Sac State, and by the way, Sac State was like my Harvard. It was like my Harvard, you know, didn't think I was going to go to college. didn't know what college was at a certain point in my life as first generation. And so that class like completely transformed the way I saw myself, the way I saw myself as a scholar, the way I viewed myself within the context of the United States. So shout out to that work of ethnic studies, and definitely something that I've taken on in my journey as well. And I wanted to share here Dr. Eric Vega as being part of that journey. He was the first ethnic studies professor I took, and he said we would get extra credit if we went to go march and apply what we were learning in the class in the community. So this is like the spark of contextualizing and also being able to use my voice, my education to empower the community. So this is one experience that I have down here in being part of the 2006 marches, immigrant rights marches. So like applying that theory and that practice is something that I take very deeply for myself as a teacher. And then also, being part of transformative spaces. So shout out to Soul Collective as an example, and this is Estela Sanchez, Executive Director, for teaching in the community and empowering young people in particular, but just the community in general, that our ancestral knowledge is valued and can be used in ways to continue to empower and liberate our experience, and then imagine a world with transformation and liberation. Also, part of my journey that has really empowered myself as a teacher, I definitely want to recognize the Sac State Teacher Education Program, because this was something that was really instilled in their program. Also as an undergrad in my mentorship as a sociology major and ethnic studies minor, the work of Professor Barajas as an example, and Dr. Berta Avila definitely instilled the sense of social justice, of using what you're learning and applying it, right, and organizing it. So this is a definition that the teacher education program really emphasized, right? And this is the CTA definition of what social justice means as an educator. So it states this: so social justice encompasses educational, economic, and political arenas. Social justice is a commitment to equity and fairness in treatment and access to opportunities and resources for everyone, recognizing that all is not equal. Social justice means that we work actively to eradicate, and that's the key component that was definitely emphasized in the program, to actively eradicate structural and institutional racism, sexism, classism, linguicism, ableism, ageism, heterosexism, religious bias, and xenophobia. Social justice means that we as educators are responsible for the collective good of society, not simply our own individual interests. And so this experience in this credential program just completely shifted what I had seen in my high school experience, right, in terms of what could be possible, right? I couldn't picture it because I had never seen it or experienced it. But just going through this program really taught me how to do this work and how to apply it into the class. And I noticed it's a huge shout out because they emphasized to have that courage to show up on your first day and to implement, right, the pedagogy, critical pedagogy, anti-racism. One, because a huge emphasis that I learned is that creating a lesson plan is a political act. And that's something I learned from Dr. Margarita Berta Avila. And it's so true, right? Like when you're planning, you're thinking, you're reflecting, and these are all critical practices to engaging your young people and thinking about how you incorporate them. I wanted to share also a collaboration that these professors did and went out into districts and the community, right? So they weren't just about
their own classroom and just to teach a credential program, but they modeled what social justice looks like and that collaboration and transformation looks like. In a collaboration in my first 4 years, my first year in particular with the principal at San Juan High School, who was Gloria Irvin at the time, who then went on to be the equity director of the district for San Juan Unified, created, along with the professors, with Dr. Jose Cintron, Adele Arellano, Mimi Coughlin, Del Allender, and Dr. Margarita Berta Avila, they created this Social Justice Institute, right? And so past recognizing that, the teaching, 1 year of the teaching credential program is not enough. And so they created a program that I got to be part of as a teacher that led me to work with a student teacher that then would, or actually 2 student teachers that then would also translate into the work that we did with our students. So I wanted to share it with you so that you can see what it looks like. And then most definitely so I can honor the work of these professors and this principal, Gloria Irvin, because this experience has taken me through an experience of continuing to incorporate this work and how this looks like. So let me go ahead and share it with you. A lot of the times, and I'm talking from my personal experience going through the educational system, sometimes you don't see yourself in what you're learning. And sometimes it's really hard to connect to a concept and how that relates to my life.
The Institute has been an opportunity here at San Juan Unified School District to work with a group of teachers. We have approximately about 20 to 25 teachers that really want to ground their teaching from a social justice paradigm, right? So looking at issues of equity and justice through their curriculum.
For a district to say, look, we want to deal with this, and we want to have a long-term commitment to surfacing these issues and helping teachers become professionalized, to navigate conversations, to develop curriculum, to manage behavioral tensions, what have you. That's rare. We've completed a summer institute, 5 days of training, focused on foundational issues, curriculum development, and a little bit in co-teaching relationships as well. From there, we're moving into a year-long coaching, mentoring partnership phase where we come into the classrooms and we observe teachers as they craft curriculum and enact curriculum with social justice themes.
Hi, my name is Hashnirat on the board. I was born in Punjab in India. It's a state. We're doing the educational journey about our school and our the lives that we get here, because we all are immigrants here. Sometimes we just look at the person and what they are, but we don't know what's inside.
We crossed the border when I was 4.
There's a lot of research around oral stories coming from indigenous practices, and so we're taking that experience and being able to share and with the group, and then also finding similarities and differences as well, and that goes to break down stereotypes as well.
In my class time, I always silent and I just talk a little bit. But today I'm feeling everybody is sitting for me. I have to go to college because he want better education for me. He always we moved for you. You have to go to college.
We meet once a month with the Social Justice Institute. We have one of the professors is assigned to our site. She provides us a support in terms of questions, coaching, strategizing for the year, what our goal is in regards to this work.
We have a community partner in Sac State. And to have 5 professors who are willing to give not only of their time during the year, but even their summer hours to make an impact. So we now have a community partner. Then we also have now this pipeline.
To have our student teachers matched with those teachers creates a real social justice culture in the district, and it strengthens what we are doing back at the university as well.
Right now, we have a shortage of teachers. This not only helps increase our volume of teachers, but teachers who are teaching relevant content that's connected to this day and generation of students.
Being able to oh, I see that every day after school happened this way, or I see this in the news, or it's kind of oh, connecting the dots, and then oh, I have an opinion, I can express an opinion about that.
Because we spend so much time teaching young girls not to show their shoulders because it'll be a distraction to guys, when we have taken zero time teaching guys that women are not sexual objects you should be distracted by. Rape culture is real and serious, and we need to talk about it. Guess what, guys? 1 in 5 women are raped. 97% of rapists don't go to jail. I know a few people who
Buddy, are you wanting us to stop the video?
And assaulted, and it could happen to me. We need to be.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Muddy, your hand is up. Did you need us to do something?
Oh, no. I just heard to stop the video.
I think you're fine, Muddy. I just noticed that your hand was up, so I didn't know if it was something we needed to do for you.
Oh, no. Okay, I'll just quickly wrap up the video. So I can pause it here, but I wanted to showcase this experience just so that something that I really took from being part of the Social Justice Institute, but also the Sac State Credential Program, and working with these amazing professors, is that they cultivated this idea of one, organizing, right? And then also really embedding social justice pedagogy into our lessons, right? And that there's ways to do it, right? And then not being scared that you will get pushback, because it's not if, it's when. Also, I wanted to share, the courageous leadership, right? So the principal at the time, Gloria Irvin, definitely had that courageous leadership in terms of making equity as a focus at our school. With that, I wanted to share that, part of this experience, really challenge and recreate the ELD program at this campus, in particular using ethnic studies pedagogy and framework. So we did away with understanding, right, what labels and identities do to young people, and or if they were long-term English learners, and seeing an ELD again in their transcript or schedule was something that they constantly pushed back, right? Like the first day they would come in. So we switched it up. Principal was supportive in this work after she went to the San Francisco Summit, where she heard, it was in 2014, in the fall of 2014, before the young people from Arizona went to, I want to say it was the Supreme Court for a hearing, and a lot of communities gathered in San Francisco, a lot of teachers, a lot of programs that had already been teaching. And so she got to hear this and definitely supported the idea of changing ELD to ethnic studies, academic language development. And it focused specifically on long-term English learners. We also had a course for first-year students. And it definitely went from 8% reclassification rate to 25%. So just definitely the power of ethnic studies at this level was very powerful. I also, part of this process and part of, my training in the program and just the continued work in the community is this youth participatory action research. As the emphasis as part of our goal in our classes to one, really connect, name and challenge systems of oppression and or in the community. These are some of my students who got to participate in collaboration with the Ethnic Studies Now Sacramento to advocate and lobby. So they got to lobby and do a press conference for AB 2016 at that time. I know there's definitely a lot of shifts in terms of the model curriculum that has rolled out. This was the initial getting it passed through the legislature. So this was very powerful, a very powerful experience. These are some of my students here. This is one of the books that I used in the course that definitely completely shifted the experience of young people. This was the first time they had ever read Latino Mexican author in particular by Dr. Victor Rios. And from reading this book, we did a youth participatory action research where then they shared their stories and experiences and then called out what was happening on campus, where they were being asked to sign like a preventative like gang contract on campus. And they were being signing it with police officers present without parent consent. And so, you know, based on this experience, taking them through this process, they were able to call it out and do away with that particular policy that was happening on campus. So that's the power of making sure that what we're teaching connects to their everyday lives. And then currently, I definitely want to shout out I'm at East Union High School now in Manteca. This is my third year, and we're currently building a equity program, you know, out of like hearing students' experiences, students beginning to name these experiences, and something that I've learned in my experience and just in training and from my mentorship is that if they don't exist, if these spaces don't exist, we create them, right? We don't ask for permission unapologetically. Let's do this work. And this is one of my amazing team, a picture of the team that we're working together right now and engaging in this courageous work to develop a plan for our school side in reaction to a lot of the stories that students are being able to name currently. So we're in that process, and this is some of the demands that came out from students as there was an event on campus where there was a lot of graffiti and a lot of derogatory language, and they saw the reactions by the teachers not calling that out or having that conversation, right? And so after this, you know, students engaged in the work and created and asked for a social justice club, and also in coalition with other clubs, we developed this particular group to engage in work to be able to, one, center their voices and be part of this transformation at our campus. We're still at that and we're still working, but the most important part is that we are centering their voices and working with the community. I try to get a picture of them, but yeah, they don't turn on their cameras. This is an example of a community meeting where students, you know, shared their stories and shared their experiences, and then collectively with community members and teachers on campus and other our administration as well, they were able to collectively kind of call out and also be able to define what should be some possible solutions. Here's another one. And then most importantly is building community with parents. This is something that we're currently working on. And again, shout out to this powerful team here on campus because this is possible with this understanding, and collectively we're going through this journey and learning and centering students and families and being of support and collaborating from across disciplines and departments and showcasing that this work can be done. Okay, and this is my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mari. Thank you, everyone. Ashley, Amy, Eliana, Mari again, and JR. So my friends, we're even actually a little bit over time. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop all of the panelists' emails into the chat. Encourage you all to please reach out These are brilliant, very resourceful individuals, and I think that they all openly conveyed that they are here to answer questions and support. I'm going to hand it to my colleague, Dr. Mehta, as well, to just kind of close us out.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. A huge shout out to our panelists today. If you want to support following JR's lead, just type the number 5 in the chat to give virtual high fives to our presenters and panelists today. And if you want to get a certification on the webinar, make sure that you complete a following survey. A link for that would be posted as well. And make sure that you keep in touch with the educators and keep doing the good work. Any final words, Dr. Lopez?
No, let's just go to the next slide. I think we have a few more slides so we can give folks. Gladys, can you move to the, yeah, so you can put your phone up and we'll drop the link for the survey in the chat for anyone who is, as Dr. Mehta mentioned, is doing the certificate of completion. We'll also make the video available. There was a lot of information shared. I think there were some comments and questions about a few more details. Our third teach-in, which will be the last of this series, will be on April 22nd. We'll be talking about racialized trauma, healing, and building a sense of community. Another fabulous, amazing lineup of just brilliant individuals. So please RSVP. Again, this will be the third and final for this semester. And we'll throw the RSVP. Thank you. It's already in the chat. And then I think that's it. I think that, do we have any other information to share? Selfish plug. So, you know, I know that we've been having all of these conversations. It's very rare that the Central Valley ends up being in the spotlight, right? We're typically not the area that folks think about when they think about California. Having grown up here, and JR, everyone pretty much reference that. And so these conversations have really caught the spotlight of many, or the attention of many. And so I'm just very honored to be able to be part of the Department of Education's upcoming Equity Thought Leader Series. And so please, if you want to, you know, come in and support, there's a whole series that's happening. I will specifically be talking about the incredible work happening in the San Joaquin and Central Valley here. So that information is in the link. And with that, I believe that we are all done. And so thank you again, everyone. And we hope to see you on the 22nd. Have a good night. Thank you.